She's lying to you!
Stop the wedding. She's lying to you. She wants to kill you. That one sentence changed everything. The orchestra halted mid-note. Dozens of stunned guests froze, champagne flutes trembling in hand. The bride's perfectly rehearsed smile faltered. All eyes turned toward the back of the ballroom, toward the voice they never expected, from the person they never noticed. Nia Monroe. A young black waitress, dressed in a crisp white uniform, natural curls tucked under her cap, her face still glowing with sweat from serving an elite crowd that had barely acknowledged her presence all night. Until now. It was supposed to be the wedding of the year. Maxwell Thorne, self-made billionaire CEO, marrying the stunning Vanessa Hartford, a socialite with a pedigree as polished as her diamonds. The venue, a private estate in Savannah, Georgia, outfitted with $200,000 worth of imported orchids and celebrity chefs flown in from New York. But no one expected the truth to walk in wearing non-slip shoes and a name tag. Hours earlier, Nia had been just another background character in their perfect day. A quiet, polite worker from the wrong side of town. The kind of person people smile at while calling hun or sweetie, never stopping to learn her name. But fate has a twisted sense of humor. While delivering champagne to the bride's dressing suite, Nia paused outside the door and heard something she was never supposed to. Vanessa's voice was cold, calculated. He signed the inheritance agreement this morning. Once we're honeymooning in the Maldives, one boating accident. No witnesses. I disappear. I get everything. Nia's hands shook, her mind raced. She could walk away, pretend she heard nothing, like society taught her to be, silent, small, invisible. But not this time. Because this isn't just drama. This is a black story. A story about how one brave woman stood up not just for justice, but for her own worth. Welcome to Hidden Worth, where stories that were never meant to be told finally find their voice. If you've ever been underestimated, overlooked, or ignored, this one's for you. Stay with us. What happens next? You won't believe it. Let's begin. Before everything changed, before her voice brought a billionaire's wedding to a dead stop, Nia Monroe was just another face in the background. She was 23 years old, young, beautiful, and unbreakably kind. Her skin was a rich mahogany tone that glowed under soft light. Her dark curls were pinned back in a neat bun, and her almond eyes sparkled with a quiet intelligence. She smiled often not because life was easy, but because she refused to let it harden her. Nia had been working events since she was 18. Fancy galas, rooftop fundraisers, country club weddings like this one. She wore the same uniform every time: black slacks, polished shoes, and a crisp white shirt buttoned to the collar. Neat. Invisible. Replaceable. To the guests, she was Miss, or sometimes you there. If they were feeling generous, she got a thank you. But most of the time, she was ignored, like part of the furniture. A moving tray with brown hands. Tonight was no different. The bride's mother didn't look her in the eyes, just waved her hand like shooing a fly. You forgot the espresso, she snapped, though Nia had never even been near the coffee station. One man, red-faced from too many cocktails, leaned in and whispered, "You're way too pretty to be serving shrimp." His wife laughed, then told him to stop, but not because he was wrong. Only because Nia might hear. She always heard. She heard when a group of women in designer gowns made a joke about how these kinds of people shouldn't be allowed in venues like this unless they were serving food. She heard the comments about her body, her voice, her hair. She heard the silence when she asked a question and was met with a look that said, "Know your place." Still, Nia never broke character. She moved with grace, balanced flutes of champagne on silver trays, thanked people who didn't thank her, smiled at those who pretended she didn't exist. Because Nia wasn't just working for tips. She was working for her mother, her best friend who was on dialysis 3 times a week. Their insurance had capped out. Bills kept coming. Nia kept working. And hoping. She had dreams too. A small bakery one day. Maybe go back to school for business. But for now, her life was wrapped in linen napkins, name tags, and aching feet. People saw her skin, her job, her silence, and assumed that was all she was. But Nia Monroe was so much more. And the world was about to find out. Before the fame, the money, and the magazine covers, Maxwell Thorne had nothing. No parents, no home, no safety net. He grew up in foster care, bouncing from house to house across the Midwest. A bed was a privilege. A hot meal was a miracle. Love? That was something he only saw in movies. By 17, Maxwell was living out of a rusted Honda Civic. He parked behind grocery stores, used the gym for showers, and taught himself how to code using free Wi-Fi from a public library. Most people never noticed him. Those who did looked away. But Maxwell was a quiet fighter. He worked nights unloading boxes at a shipping warehouse, and during the day, he built small websites for local businesses. His first big break came when a local bakery needed an online ordering system. He built it in 2 days, got paid $200, and spent half of it buying groceries for an elderly woman who always smiled at him from the bus stop. That was Maxwell even when he had nothing. He gave what he could. Over the next 5 years, he hustled, he networked, he made mistakes and learned from them, and slowly, things changed. He co-founded a health tech startup focused on affordable diagnostics. At first, it struggled. Investors said he looked too rough, that he didn't have the presence. But the product worked, lives were saved, and people started to notice. By 34, Maxwell Thorne was a billionaire. Forbes called him the CEO with a street-smart soul. Time named him one of the most influential voices in tech, but Maxwell never let go of his roots. He still lived modestly, still sent checks to his old foster homes, still showed up to speak at high schools where kids looked just like he once did, lost, hungry, overlooked. He believed in second chances, in redemption, in love. So when he met Vanessa Hartford, poised, charming, from a world he'd never been part of, he thought maybe the universe was finally giving him a gift. She made him laugh. She called him brilliant. She told him he was the man she'd been waiting for. Maxwell believed her. Because for once, he wanted to believe someone saw him, not the money, not the company, not the press, but him. He didn't know. She saw only a target. Vanessa Hartford knew how to play a role. And she played it well. She was the kind of woman who turned heads when she walked into a room, tall, statuesque, with icy blue eyes and the kind of smile that made people drop their guard. Her voice? Soft, measured, like the opening notes of a piano ballad. She wore elegance like armor and wealth like perfume, subtle but unmistakable. To the world, she was perfection. Born into an old money family in Charleston, Vanessa had grown up surrounded by silverware settings, private schools, and generational arrogance. She learned early that beauty had power and that men with money often confused charm with character. She never worked a day in her life, never needed to. Instead, she mastered the art of influence, dinner parties, country clubs, charitable galas, always just close enough to power, never too far from opportunity. By the time she met Maxwell Thorne, she already had a reputation, the kind that whispers behind martini glasses. 2 previous engagements, both to wealthy men. One disappeared after a scandal. The other? Rumors said he relocated to Europe after signing over half his estate. But nothing ever stuck to Vanessa. She was too careful, too rehearsed, too perfect. Maxwell, for all his brilliance, never saw it coming. He was drawn to her confidence, her poise, the way she seemed to understand his loneliness. She spoke to him like he was more than just a business headline, like a man. That's all he'd ever wanted. Someone to love him for who he was. And Vanessa? She gave him that illusion. Behind the scenes, she was calculating, cold, focused. She learned the structure of his company, the location of his assets, the terms of his trust fund. She offered to sign a prenup knowing he'd say no. That gesture alone won his heart. She called it love, but it was strategy. And on the night of the wedding, as cameras flashed and guests laughed over lobster canapes, Vanessa kept checking her phone not because she was nervous, but because the man on the other end of the line was waiting. Jackson. Her real partner, her insurance policy. The one who promised to help her vanish after Maxwell was out of the way. Vanessa Hartford was every man's dream and every woman's warning. To the world, she was elegance in human form. A tall, graceful blonde with perfect posture, a Harvard education, and a bloodline that stretched back to colonial America. She knew how to work a room with nothing more than eye contact and a well-timed smile. She didn't chase money. She attracted it. But beneath that polished surface was something colder, sharper. Vanessa wasn't born poor. She was born powerful. Her father was a federal judge. Her mother chaired museum boards and made donations that came with naming rights. Vanessa learned early that appearances were everything, and truth could be adjusted, edited, polished, or erased. In her world, truth didn't matter. Only perception did. Her beauty got her through doors. Her intelligence kept her in the room. And her ambition? That's what made her dangerous. By 31, Vanessa had been engaged twice. The first was to a wealthy hedge fund manager in Manhattan. The relationship ended abruptly after a financial scandal, one she seemed to escape untouched. The second was a tech investor who transferred a large portion of his assets to her before backing out of the wedding. Weeks later, he relocated to Switzerland. He never spoke about her again, and yet, Vanessa always remained untarnished. Flawless on Instagram, kind to waitstaff, donor to children's hospitals. She curated her life like a gallery, and Maxwell Thorne was meant to be the centerpiece. To her, Maxwell was perfect. Not because he was kind or principled, but because he was brilliant, wealthy, and most importantly emotionally vulnerable. He had climbed so far from nothing that he still looked at love like a reward, like something pure. Vanessa used that. She memorized every corner of his life, his company structure, his philanthropic goals, the terms of his will. She spoke his language, talked about building a future, giving back, starting a family. It was all a script. She even suggested a prenup, knowing it would melt his heart when he insisted she didn't need one. She cried when he said it was love that mattered, not paperwork. But her tears were rehearsed. On the day of the wedding, she wore a custom Vera Wang gown, smiled like a goddess, and posed for photos beside a man who thought he'd found his forever. What he didn't know was that Vanessa had a secret partner, a man named Jackson, her lover, her co-conspirator. And the plan was simple. Marry Maxwell, get control of his assets, go on a honeymoon in the Maldives, and never come back. It would have worked if not for one thing she never saw coming. A waitress with a good heart, and an even better memory. The wedding was breathtaking, but not for everyone. As the orchestra played soft jazz and white petals floated through the air, Nia Monroe walked quietly between silk-draped tables, balancing a silver tray of champagne flutes. Her uniform was crisp. Her hair was neat. Her back was straight. She carried herself with pride, but even that wasn't enough to shield her from what came next. It started small. A woman in a designer dress waved her off with two fingers like she was swatting away an insect. "You forgot the napkins," she said sharply, even though Nia hadn't even been assigned to her table. Then came the whispers. "She's pretty for one of them," a guest muttered under his breath, just loud enough for his table to hear and laugh. One woman added, "She looks too polished for a server. I wonder if she's someone's +1 who got confused." The crowd was dressed in luxury, silk, diamonds, custom suits, but it was their words, not their clothes, that cut the deepest. Nia had dealt with this before. The way some guests looked right through her, like she wasn't real. The way they assumed she couldn't possibly understand words like caviar or Chateau Margaux. The way they talked louder when speaking to her, as if her ears or her education didn't work the same. But tonight, it stung more than usual. Maybe it was the contrast, the beauty of the venue clashing with the ugliness in the air. Or maybe it was because this was supposed to be a celebration of love, yet it felt like a reminder of where love was allowed and where it wasn't. At one point, a young girl tugged on her mother's gown and asked, "Why can't the brown lady sit and eat with us?" The mother smiled awkwardly and whispered, "She's the help, honey. She doesn't belong out here." Nia swallowed hard, not because it hurt, but because it had become so normal. Later, while cleaning a spill near the dance floor, a groomsman drunkenly said, "Careful, sweetheart, don't trip on your roots." Then laughed as if he'd told a clever joke. His friends joined in. No one corrected him. No one ever did. Even the manager scolded Nia not for doing anything wrong, but because her presence was too noticeable. She was told to stick to the corners, to avoid eye contact, to remember her role. But here's the thing about roles. Sometimes, they're meant to be rewritten. Nia had been silent for years. Tonight, she was done shrinking herself to make others feel comfortable. Because when truth knocks, even the fanciest wedding can't block the sound. It was supposed to be a simple delivery, one last tray of champagne before the toast. Nia walked down the hallway that led to the bride's private dressing suite, her footsteps muffled by the thick carpet. The air smelled like roses and perfume. Everything about the space whispered luxury, elegance, untouchable power. But power has cracks, and that night, Nia found one. As she approached the suite, the door was slightly ajar. Not wide open, not closed, just enough. Enough for sound to travel. Enough for secrets to slip through. She heard laughter at first, then a voice she recognized. Vanessa. Gone was the smooth, graceful tone she used with guests. In its place was something sharper, cooler, more calculating. "Yes, he signed it this morning," Vanessa said, her voice low but clear. "The whole thing. Everything will transfer into the joint trust once the vows are official." Silence on the other end of the line. Then she spoke again. "Maldives in 4 days, private boat, no staff, no cameras, one accident, and I vanish. Rich, single, and in the wind." Nia froze. Her heart raced, but her body didn't move. Her hands tightened around the tray. Glasses clinked softly. Her breath caught in her throat. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. But she couldn't stop listening either. Vanessa chuckled. "He thinks this is about love. Bless his heart, he still believes in happy endings." Nia stepped back, slowly, carefully, like someone trying not to wake a sleeping snake. Everything in her screamed to walk away. This wasn't her problem. She was the help, remember? Just a waitress with tired feet and a sick mom and no place in this story. But something deeper, stronger held her there. She thought about Maxwell, about how he looked at Vanessa during the rehearsal dinner, like she was his entire world. She thought about her own mother, and how many times she'd told Nia, "You can't fight every battle, but some battles choose you." This one had chosen her. Nia slipped her phone from her apron pocket and pressed the voice memo button. She didn't know what she'd do with it. She didn't have a plan, but she had proof now. And for the first time that night, she wasn't just a bystander. She wasn't just a waitress. She was a witness. And witnesses change everything. The recording was shaky, but the words were clear. Nia stood frozen in the hallway, her phone still warm in her hand. Vanessa's voice echoed in her ears. Every instinct told her to do something, tell someone, stop the wedding. But who would believe her? She tucked the phone into her pocket and rushed toward the staff hallway, her mind racing. The ballroom was just down the corridor, filled with people in tuxedos and gowns, guests who wouldn't give her the time of day, let alone trust her with something this serious. Still, she had to try. Her first stop was her shift manager, Derek, a grumpy man in his late 40s who had made it clear he only cared about 2 things, time cards and tips. "Derek," she said, her voice shaking, "I need to speak with you. It's about the bride, something serious." He didn't even look up from his clipboard. "Is this about table 4 again?" "No," she said louder. "I overheard something. She's planning to." He cut her off with a sigh. "Nia, this is not your business. You're here to serve, not start drama. But I have a recording." He finally looked at her, annoyed. "Delete it. That's a serious privacy violation. You want to get fired? Because you're 5 seconds away." She stared at him, stunned. He turned back to his clipboard like nothing happened. Still holding her breath, she stepped outside and dialed a number she hadn't used in months. Taylor Green, a young journalist she'd met during a catering job at a local university event. Taylor had once told her, "If you ever come across a real story, call me." This had to be one of those moments. The phone rang. Then again. Then voicemail. She tried texting, "Urgent. I have a recording from a wedding. Bride is planning to kill the groom after the honeymoon. Please call me back." Nothing. Time was slipping. She tried one last option, security. But the moment she approached, they looked her up and down, already annoyed. "You're not supposed to be back here," one of them barked. "I just need to talk to someone about the bride. Miss, unless someone's bleeding or stealing caviar, turn around." That was it. Doors closed, eyes rolled, voices silenced. Nia realized something brutal. Telling the truth meant nothing if no one wanted to hear it. And yet, she still had the truth. She still had the tape. And she still had a choice. Nia stood alone in the staff restroom, her back pressed against the cool tile wall, her chest rising and falling with shallow, anxious breaths. The fluorescent light buzzed overhead, casting a harsh glow across the small room. In front of her was a smudged mirror, cheap, unremarkable. barely hanging straight. But in that moment, it held something more than just a reflection. It held a question. Who am I if I walk away? She stared at herself. The neatly tied bun, the soft brown skin, the tired eyes of a woman who hadn't slept more than 4 hours in days. She looked like a waitress, like a background character in someone else's celebration. But she wasn't. She was the only one in that building who knew the truth, who held a recording that could save a man's life or end her own career. Her phone buzzed in her apron pocket. Still nothing from the reporter, nothing from anyone. No missed calls, no replies, no lifeline. She thought about what Derek said, that she should delete the recording and know her place. That she was just the help. But was she? In the mirror, her eyes narrowed. She remembered something her mother used to say. There are moments in life when the world will dare you to stay silent. That's when your voice matters most. She had heard that saying 100 times, but tonight, it finally landed. Heavy, real. This wasn't about heroism. It wasn't about being brave. It was about doing the right thing when it would have been so much easier to look the other way. She turned the faucet on, splashed water on her face, and let the cold jolt her back into clarity. Her hand still trembled, but her heart was steady now. No one else believed her. But maybe they didn't have to, not yet. Sometimes, the right thing starts with one person standing alone. She dried her hands, fixed her collar, and looked herself dead in the eyes. You're not just the help, she whispered. Then she turned, opened the door, and stepped back into the chaos, not as a waitress, not as a background character, but as someone ready to change everything. The music was soft, the lighting warm, the mood picture perfect. Guests rose from their seats as the bride entered, escorted by her father down a white rose-lined aisle. Cameras flashed. A harpist played a delicate version of Can't Help Falling in Love. Maxwell stood at the altar, his eyes fixed on Vanessa like she was the answer to every prayer he'd ever whispered into the dark. Everyone in that room believed they were about to witness a fairy tale. Everyone, except Nia. She stood at the back of the ballroom, heart pounding like a war drum. The tray in her hands was gone. So was the fear in her chest. All that remained was the truth and the voice in her head that kept whispering, "You can't let this happen." She clutched her phone, opened the voice memo, and turned off the screen. The officiant spoke. "We are gathered here today to celebrate the union." Nia stepped forward. A few heads turned, a few more when she raised her voice. "Excuse me." The officiant paused, confused. Nia took a breath. "I'm sorry. I know this is not my place, but I can't stay silent." Vanessa's smile stiffened. Maxwell turned, eyebrows furrowed. And then Nia said it. "She's lying to you. She doesn't love you. She's planning to hurt you." After the honeymoon. A collective gasp. The room froze. "What the hell is this?" Vanessa snapped, stepping away from the altar. "Who is this girl?" "I'm the waitress you've ignored all night," Nia said calmly. "But I'm also the one who heard your phone call. I have it recorded. I heard you talk about the inheritance, about the accident, about disappearing." Nia reached into her pocket and played the audio. Vanessa's voice filled the room, cold, calculated, undeniable. Guests turned, phones came out, whispers exploded like wildfire. Maxwell's face dropped, his hands trembled. "Is this real?" he asked, barely above a whisper. Vanessa's expression cracked. She looked at Nia, then at the phone, then at the guests. Her mask had slipped, and the venom underneath was finally visible. Security stepped forward, unsure of what to do. "I think we're done here," Nia said quietly. Maxwell didn't say a word. He simply took off his wedding ring, the one he'd never even worn, and placed it on the altar. Then he looked at Nia, really looked at her. And for the first time that night, someone saw her not as a waitress, but as a person. The room erupted. The wedding was over. And Nia Monroe had just rewritten the ending. The ballroom emptied faster than anyone expected. Some guests left in stunned silence. Others whispered, still clutching their champagne like it could explain what just happened. The orchestra had stopped playing. The flowers sat untouched. The 5-tier wedding cake leaned under its own weight, beautiful, meaningless. And Maxwell Thorne stood alone at the altar, frozen in place. For a full minute he didn't move. Then, slowly, he stepped down from the platform, walked to the nearest chair, and Saturday, his shoulders slumped, His hands hung loosely between his knees, the room around him blurred. His world, the life he thought he'd built, had just imploded in front of 100 people. And he hadn't seen it coming. All his success, all the billion-dollar decisions, the boardroom wins, the speeches, the articles calling him a visionary, none of it had prepared him for this. He felt like a fool. More than that, he felt broken. Security had already taken Vanessa away. Her screams echoed in his ears. She had tried to spin it, claim it was a misunderstanding, but the audio didn't lie. The way she said those words, cold, deliberate, haunted him now. Maxwell didn't cry. Not then, but something inside him cracked wide open. How could he not have known? He thought about all the moments he ignored his gut, all the signs he brushed off, the small hesitations, the strange phone calls, the prenup conversation she'd strangely welcomed. He'd wanted love so badly, he let himself believe a lie. It wasn't just betrayal, it was identity-shattering. He had built a life on trust, on gut instinct, on believing in people. And now, the person he trusted most had planned to destroy him. His entire body felt heavy, like he was carrying not just shame, but disappointment in himself. Then he remembered the voice that stopped everything. Nia, the girl no one saw, the waitress with courage he didn't have. She didn't owe him anything, and yet she risked everything. For him, that realization shifted something. For the first time in hours, Maxwell sat up straighter. He took a long breath. It didn't erase the pain, but it reminded him he was still alive, still here. He had been broken before by poverty, by the foster system, by a world that tried to crush him, but he'd rebuilt himself once. He could do it again. This time, wiser. Nia Monroe didn't go viral overnight. In fact, the day after the interrupted wedding, she showed up for her morning diner shift right on time, still wearing the same black shoes from the night before. She didn't say much, just tied her apron, refilled the coffee pots, and waited tables like she always had. But the world had already started talking. Someone had filmed her speech. The video of the black waitress who stopped a billionaire's wedding with a voice memo hit social media within hours. By sunrise, it had over 2 million views, and it didn't stop there. News outlets picked it up. Talk shows debated whether she was a hero or a whistleblower. Hashtags like #Thank you Nia and #The waitress who saved him began trending across platforms. People from all walks of life, teachers, single moms, activists, even celebrities, shared stories about moments they'd stayed silent and wished they hadn't. Nia had done what so many were afraid to do: speak up, even when it cost her everything. And the world noticed. But Nia didn't chase the spotlight. She kept her head down, kept working. She still visited her mom at the dialysis center every evening, still folded her laundry in quarters, still worried about rent. Then came the letter. Hand-delivered, embossed paper, Maxwell Thorne's signature at the bottom. He didn't offer her money. He offered her a job. Public ethics advisor, internal ombudsman, company spokesperson. He said she could choose the title, he just wanted her voice in the room. I built a company on truth, the letter read. And I almost married a lie. I want people like you around me now, people who tell the truth even when no one's listening. Nia took a week to think about it, not because she doubted herself, but because no one had ever asked for her opinion like this before. And when she finally said yes, it wasn't just a new chapter. It was a whole new book. She moved into a new apartment, paid off her mom's medical debt, enrolled in night classes in communications, started speaking at schools about courage, self-worth, and the power of choosing to do the right thing. Nia Monroe, the girl who once blended into the wallpaper, had become a voice people listened to. Her story didn't start at the altar, but it began the moment she chose to stop being silent. Some stories stay with you not because they're dramatic, but because they're true. Nia Monroe didn't set out to be a hero. She wasn't trying to be brave. She was just a young woman with a quiet voice and a strong sense of what was right. In a room full of power, privilege, and pretense, she chose to stand in her truth. And that choice changed everything. It's easy to believe that our voice doesn't matter, that our jobs are too small, our titles too low, our roles too replaceable. The world can be loud in the way it tries to make us feel invisible, especially if you're a woman, if you're black, if you're poor, if you come from the outside. But Nia's story reminds us, your value is never determined by what others see. It's defined by what you believe about yourself. She could have walked away that night. She could have told herself it wasn't her problem. She could have played it safe. Instead, she listened to that quiet voice inside, the one that told her, this matters. That's what courage really is. Not the absence of fear, but moving forward anyway. Maxwell Thorne, for all his wealth and success, nearly lost everything because he didn't see through the surface. And Vanessa Hartford, for all her beauty and charm, chose manipulation over authenticity and ended up alone. But Nia? She didn't rise by pretending to be someone else. She rose by honoring exactly who she was. So if you're listening to this, maybe from your car, your couch, your job, and you've ever felt small or unseen, let this be your reminder. You don't have to wait for permission to matter. You don't have to shout to be powerful. You just have to be honest with yourself and with the world. Because sometimes, one quiet voice in the back of the room can stop the whole show. And that voice could be yours. If this story moved you, if you saw even a piece of yourself in Nia, take a second and share this episode with someone who needs to be reminded of their own worth. This is Hidden Worth, where we tell stories that weren't meant to be heard, but needed to be. Until next time, stay bold. And never forget, what makes you different might just be what makes you unstoppable.